It was October 14th, 1967. The air at Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia was electric, buzzing with the energy of a crowd eager to see two of Motown's brightest stars. On stage, Marvin Gaye, the Prince of Soul, stood beside his singing partner, the incandescent Tammi Terrell. They were in the middle of their hit, Your Precious Love, a song that perfectly captured their on-stage chemistry, a chemistry so potent it felt like you were eavesdropping on a private, heartfelt conversation. But as the song reached its crescendo, something went terribly wrong. Tammi, who had been complaining of debilitating headaches for weeks, suddenly swayed, her body going limp. She collapsed, falling directly into Marvin's outstretched arms. The music screeched to a halt. The crowd gasped. In that single terrifying moment, the fairy tale partnership of Marvin Gaye and Tammi Terrell came to an abrupt and tragic end. Tammi would never perform live again. That collapse was the first public sign of a battle that had been raging silently within her, a battle against a malignant brain tumor that would cut her life short at the unbelievably young age of 24. This isn't just the story of a talented singer who died too young. It's the story of a woman whose dazzling light was extinguished by a shadow she couldn't outrun, a story of incredible strength in the face of unspeakable pain, and a story of a love, both professional and personal, that was so profound it would haunt Marvin Gaye for the rest of his life. This is the heartbreaking, untold story of Tammi Terrell. To understand Tammy's journey, we have to travel back to a different America. Thomasina Winifred Montgomery, the girl who would become Tammi Terrell, was born in Philadelphia on April 29, 1945. This was post-war America, a time of seeming prosperity and optimism, but also a time of deep-seated racial segregation and limited opportunities for African Americans. Philadelphia, while not in the Jim Crow South, was still a city of invisible lines and unspoken rules. Yet it was also a city with a vibrant black cultural scene, a place where music was a lifeline, a form of expression, and a path to a different kind of life. Tammi grew up in a middle-class family. Her father, Thomas, was a barbershop owner, and her mother, Jenny, was a former actress. Jenny had dreams of stardom for her children, and she channeled those ambitions into her daughter. From a very young age, Thomasina was groomed for the stage. She was enrolled in dance classes, piano lessons, and singing lessons. She was a precocious talent, winning local talent shows by the time she was 11. There was an undeniable spark in her, a charisma that went far beyond her years. She had a voice that was both powerful and sweet, capable of conveying a world of emotion in a single note. But beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic upbringing, there were darker currents. Jenny was a demanding and often overbearing stage mother. The pressure to succeed was immense, and the young Thomasina often felt the weight of her mother's unfulfilled dreams on her small shoulders. Her childhood was less about skinned knees and playground games, and more about rehearsals, auditions, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. This early pressure cooker environment would shape the woman she became, fiercely ambitious, incredibly resilient, but also deeply vulnerable and yearning for the genuine affection that seemed just out of reach. Her professional journey began when she was just a teenager. At 15, she was discovered by the producer Luther Dixon and signed a contract with Scepter/Wand Records. It was here that she was given her first stage name, Tammi Montgomery. She released a handful of singles, including If You See Bill, and even toured with R&B giant James Brown. The experience was a baptism by fire. The Chitlin Circuit, as the network of venues for black performers was known, was a grueling world of one-night stands, long bus rides, and often unscrupulous promoters. Life on the road with James Brown was particularly brutal. Brown was a notoriously tough bandleader, a perfectionist who demanded absolute discipline from his performers. But his relationship with the young Tammi Montgomery allegedly crossed a dark line. In later years, friends and fellow musicians would recount stories of abuse. Charles Bobbitt, a longtime aide to Brown, claimed he witnessed Brown physically assaulting her. According to some accounts, the abuse was severe and traumatic, leaving deep emotional scars on the teenage singer. She was just a kid, barely 17, navigating a world of adults where exploitation was all too common. She eventually left the James Brown Review, a decision that likely saved her, both physically and emotionally. After leaving Brown, she enrolled in the University of Pennsylvania, intending to study pre-med. For a moment, it seemed like she might leave the often toxic world of show business behind for a more stable life. But the pull of music was too strong. The stage was where she felt most alive, where she could transform her pain into something beautiful. In 1965, during a performance in Detroit, she was spotted by none other than Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown Records. Gordy was a master at spotting raw talent, and in Tammi Montgomery he saw a superstar. He signed her to the label, and it was he who gave her the name that would make her famous, Tammi Terrell. Gordy felt Tammi Montgomery didn't have enough star power. Terrell, he thought, had a more sophisticated, alluring ring to it. At Motown, Tammi was initially a solo artist. She had a moderate hit with I Can't Believe You Love Me, a song that showcased her powerful, soulful voice. But it was her pairing with Marvin Gaye that would catapult her to international fame. Marvin was already a huge star, one of Motown's leading men. He had a string of hits to his name, but he was looking for a new duets partner. His previous partner, Kim Weston, had left Motown, and the label was scrambling to find a replacement. The moment Tammi and Marvin stepped into a studio together, something magical happened. Their voices blended perfectly, a seamless fusion of masculine grit and feminine grace. But it was more than just vocal compatibility. They had an almost telepathic connection, an intuitive understanding of each other's phrasing and emotional delivery. Their first single, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, released in 1967, was an instant classic. Written and produced by the brilliant team of Nicholas Ashford and Valerie Simpson, the song was an anthem of unwavering love and determination. It was a smash hit, and it was just the beginning. A string of iconic duets followed. Your Precious Love, If I Could Build My Whole World Around You, Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, and You're All I Need to Get By. Each song was a miniature masterpiece, a perfect capsule of romantic devotion. On stage, their chemistry was even more electrifying. They would gaze into each other's eyes, their movements perfectly in sync, creating an illusion of passionate romance that was so convincing, many people assumed they were lovers in real life. They weren't, at least not in the conventional sense, but their bond was incredibly deep, a platonic love affair that was, in many ways, more intimate and profound than any romance. Marvin would later say, Tammi was my sister, my playmate, my friend. The love between Marvin and Tammi was real, but it was a complex, layered affection, born of shared experiences and a deep mutual respect. Marvin was a troubled soul, a man who battled his own demons of depression and insecurity. In Tammi, he found a kindred spirit, someone whose bright, effervescent personality seemed to chase away his shadows. He was fiercely protective of her, seeing in her a vulnerability that mirrored his own. For Tammi, Marvin was a safe harbor. He was the one person in the male-dominated, often predatory music industry that she could trust implicitly. He respected her talent, valued her as an equal, and offered her a genuine, unconditional friendship that she had craved her entire life. Their on-stage performances were a testament to this unique bond. They weren't just singing lyrics, they were communicating, telling a story with their eyes, their smiles, their every gesture. When Marvin sang, "To make you happy is my desire," and looked at Tammi, you believed him. And when she sang back, "My love is alive," way down in my heart, you could feel her sincerity. Eyewitnesses from that time speak of an almost tangible energy between them. Valerie Simpson, who co-wrote many of their greatest hits, recalled, "There was a magic there. We as the writers were just blessed that they were the vessels to sing our songs, because they made you believe. You believed every word." But behind the dazzling smiles and the perfect harmonies, a storm was gathering. For months leading up to that fateful night in Virginia, Tammi had been suffering from excruciating headaches. She dismissed them as migraines, a consequence of the stress and exhaustion of her demanding schedule. She was a trooper, a professional who believed the show must go on. She would pop aspirin, plaster on a smile, and walk out into the spotlight, never letting on the agony she was in. Marvin knew something was wrong. He would see the flicker of pain in her eyes, notice her unsteadiness on her feet. He pleaded with her to see a doctor, to take a break, but she was stubborn, determined not to let anyone down. The collapse on stage was the terrifying culmination of this silent struggle. As Marvin held her unconscious form in his arms, the music silenced. The adoring crowd faded into a blur of terrified faces. In that moment, he was not a superstar. He was just a man, terrified of losing someone he loved. The diagnosis, when it finally came, was devastating. Tammi had a malignant glioblastoma, an aggressive and incurable brain tumor. The doctors at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital gave her a grim prognosis. But Tammi, ever the fighter, refused to surrender to despair. Over the next 2.5 years, she would endure a grueling series of 8 separate brain surgeries. Each operation was a brutal assault on her increasingly fragile body. She lost her hair, her memory began to fail, and her weight plummeted to under 90 pounds. The vibrant, vivacious young woman who had lit up stages across the country was slowly being erased by this cruel, insidious disease. The period of Tammi's illness is shrouded in a great deal of pain and some controversy. As her health deteriorated, her ability to record new music became impossible. Yet in 1968, Motown released a new Marvin Gaye and Tammi Terrell album titled Easy. The album spawned 2 hit singles, Good Lovin' Ain't Easy to Come By and What You Gave Me. This is where the story takes a complicated and debated turn. For years, rumors have circulated that Tammi was too ill to have recorded the songs on that album. The most persistent claim, one that Marvin Gaye himself reportedly confirmed in later years, is that Valerie Simpson, the co-writer of the songs, secretly sang Tammi's parts. Valerie Simpson has always vehemently denied this. She maintains that Tammi, in a display of incredible courage and determination, did record the vocals. Simpson has described a heart-wrenching recording process where a frail and weakened Tammi would be brought into the studio. They would have to record her line by line, sometimes even word by word, as she struggled with her memory and her strength. The producers would then painstakingly piece these fragments together to create a complete vocal performance. Simpson recalled, "She wanted to do it. She would come to the studio when she could. We had to do it in bits and pieces. It was painful for her. It was painful for us to watch." The truth likely lies somewhere in the murky middle. It's possible that Tammi did record some of the vocals, but that her parts were heavily supplemented and sweetened by Valerie Simpson's voice to achieve the polished sound Motown demanded. The label, ever the hit-making machine, was arguably more concerned with producing a commercially viable product than with complete transparency. Berry Gordy and the Motown executives likely made a calculated decision to present the album as a genuine Marvin and Tammi record, knowing that the story of her tragic illness would only add to its emotional pull. For them, it was business. But for those who loved Tammi, it felt like an exploitation of her legacy, a final sad chapter in a life that had already seen too much pain. The controversy over the Easy album remains a sensitive and debated topic among Motown historians and fans, a reminder of the often unseen complexities and compromises that lie beneath the shiny surface of the music industry. Another dark shadow that looms over Tammi's story is the persistent allegation of abuse at the hands of men in her life. The stories about James Brown are well documented by those who were there, but there were also rumors about her tumultuous relationship with David Ruffin, the charismatic but volatile lead singer of The Temptations. Friends have described a passionate but deeply destructive romance, marked by jealousy and, allegedly, physical violence. One particularly harrowing and widely circulated story claims that Ruffin, in a fit of rage, once struck Tammi in the head with a motorcycle helmet. Some have even speculated, though it remains pure speculation with no medical basis, that this blow could have somehow contributed to or exacerbated the brain tumor that would later claim her life. What is certain is that Tammi's life was marked by a tragic pattern of relationships with powerful, charismatic, but ultimately dangerous men. She was a woman searching for love and security in a world that often offered her exploitation and pain instead. The final years of Tammi Terrell's life were a slow, heartbreaking fade. She spent most of her time in and out of hospitals, a shadow of her former self. The surgeries had taken a terrible toll. She was confined to a wheelchair, her body ravaged by the cancer and the treatments. Yet, even in her darkest moments, her spirit, though battered, was not entirely broken. Her mother, Jenny, was her constant companion, caring for her with a fierce, unwavering devotion. Marvin Gaye was a frequent visitor. He would sit by her bedside for hours, holding her hand, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in silence. He tried to keep her spirits up, telling her about his life, about the music, trying to bring a piece of the world she had lost back to her. But seeing her in that state was agonizing for him. He was witnessing the slow, cruel extinguishing of a brilliant light, and it shattered him. He was haunted by a profound sense of helplessness and guilt. He felt he should have done more, should have forced her to see a doctor sooner. He retreated into himself, falling into a deep depression that would plague him for years. He stopped touring, stopped performing live. The joy had gone out of it. How could he sing those beautiful love songs they had shared when the woman who gave them life was slipping away? The final album, released under their name, Easy, became a painful reminder of what he had lost. He felt it was a deception, a ghost of a partnership that had once been so vibrant and real. Tammi Terrell died on March 16, 1970. Just a month shy of her 25th birthday. The official cause of death was complications from her brain tumor. Her funeral was a somber affair, attended by her family, friends, and the Motown elite. One notable absence was Marvin Gaye. He was too grief-stricken to attend. Instead, he stood at a distance, watching the proceedings from afar, a solitary figure lost in his sorrow. According to some accounts, he approached the open casket, spoke a few final words to her, and then walked away, unable to bear the finality of it all. Tammi's death was a profound turning point for Marvin Gaye. It plunged him into a period of seclusion and deep introspection. The buoyant, optimistic love songs he had sung with Tammi no longer made sense to him. The world felt like a darker, more complicated place. His grief and disillusionment would become the crucible out of which his greatest work, the seminal 1971 album What's Going On, was forged. That album, a powerful social commentary on war, poverty, and injustice, was a radical departure from the classic-y Motown sound. It was the sound of an artist reborn, an artist who had looked into the abyss and had come back with something profound to say. In a very real way, Tammy's death was the catalyst for Marvin's artistic evolution. The loss of her light forced him to find a new voice, a new purpose. The joy and pain of their relationship, the tragedy of her death, it all flowed into the grooves of What's Going On, giving it an emotional depth and gravitas that continues to resonate with listeners to this day. Tammi Terrell's historical significance, therefore, is twofold. She was a star in her own right, a singer of immense talent whose life was cut tragically short. But she was also a muse, a catalyst, the ghost in the machine of one of the most important albums of the 20th century. Her spirit, her memory, her tragic end, they are all woven into the fabric of that masterpiece. So what is the legacy of Tammi Terrell? It's easy to see her as just a tragic footnote in the larger story of Motown and Marvin Gaye. A beautiful voice silenced too soon. But to do so is to miss the essence of who she was. Her story is a poignant, powerful reminder of the fragility of life and the indomitable nature of the human spirit. She was a woman who faced unimaginable adversity with a courage that is nothing short of heroic. Think about it. A teenager navigating the treacherous waters of the music industry, a young woman enduring alleged abuse, and finally, a patient battling a relentless, terminal disease. Through it all, she continued to create, to sing, to bring joy to millions. There's a particularly striking quote from her, one that is rarely mentioned but speaks volumes about her inner strength. In a brief interview given during her illness, when asked how she was coping, she simply said, "I'm living for today. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, so I'm just grateful for the moments I have." That wasn't just a platitude, it was a philosophy born of immense suffering. It was the creed of a fighter who refused to be defined by her illness. Her life was a complex tapestry of light and shadow, of dazzling success and private pain. She was a victim, yes, but she was never just a victim. She was a survivor, an artist, a friend, a daughter, and an inspiration. The music she made with Marvin Gaye remains timeless, not just because of its melodic brilliance, but because of the genuine human connection that radiates from every Hughes note. When we listen to Ain't No Mountain High Enough, we aren't just hearing a great pop song, we are hearing the sound of two souls connecting, of a love that was pure and profound. And in that, Tammi Terrell achieved a kind of immortality. Her time on this earth was cruelly brief, but the light she cast continues to shine, a testament to a precious love that death itself could not diminish.